Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everything Iconic with me, Danny Pellegrino. I'm here with Gail from Top Chef. I am so excited. Gail, first of all, how are you doing today?
Thanks for asking. Hi, Danny. I'm excited to hear too. I'm doing okay. You know what? We're feeling hopeful today. It's way colder in New York than it should be on this day, but ultimately, I feel like there's some light coming through the clouds.
Right. Yeah, it's cold. I'm in LA.
Figuratively and literally.
I'm here in LA, and I have my jacket on because it's really cold here today
See
too, and
that?
unexpectedly. Gail, I gotta say, I started watching Top Chef at the beginning of quarantine with my boyfriend, and we binged through 11 seasons plus the 2 seasons of Just Desserts. And then we had to take a break. We had to take a break because we were like, this is a lot. But we're excited now for the new season to watch like in real time. Have you heard from other people who have sort of binged over this kind of crazy period we've been living through?
Like a lot of, everything kind of happens all at once for amazing reasons. And, the sad part of quarantine, obviously, there's so many sad things, but the pandemic, obviously with lockdown, shut down the restaurant industry, which was horribly depressing and catastrophic, truly. But one amazing small point of light was that our previous season, our All-Star season, season 17, premiered the week after lockdown began in mid-March last year. And I think it did instill some life and escape and hope for our industry, but also just for people at home who were looking to see, kind of goodness and hopefulness and talent do what they do best on the show. So season 17 was really momentous for us in a lot of ways. It was a really exciting season, but I think it's just the timing of it was really fortuitous that it installed like much needed hope and enthusiasm into the industry and about the show. And because of it, people then, when the season was over, really started binging the show again. And that was really exciting. Although I always feel terrible for anyone who goes back to season one and has to deal with my hair and like, the fashion choices that we all made back then. That's like a whole other podcast.
Right.
But it was amazing that all of a sudden it stirred up everyone's reinvigoration of the show, and people were home so much that they started streaming. And then, Peacock launched, NBC's streaming service that, Bravo is part of. So people all of a sudden had so much more access to all the past seasons. And Just Desserts as part of it. Just Desserts is interesting because, we just did 2 seasons, but I don't think a week goes by when I'm not asked about it.
Yeah, I'm upset.
Still so engaged with it. It was amazing. I mean, it's amazing. It's bizarre.
What happened?
Crazy.
Why aren't we getting another season? What happened? I like fell in love with Just Desserts. I loved it.
Danny, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, that's a question for my Bravo executive, but I think a number of things about Just Desserts. We were ahead of our time in a lot of ways. We shot it in like 2011, 2012, 2011, 2012, I think. It's all a bit foggy. But it was like a decade ago, which is crazy. I was another person. I was 17 at the time. Yeah, I wish. But I think in terms of pastry and baking competition, we were sort of ahead of our time. And it was an enormously challenging show to produce, because pastry is so different in terms of just the process than cooking savory food, which can all just be done spontaneously, and finished within 45 minutes, and you have a full 8-course meal and you see it come to life before your eyes. Baking is like you mix something and it looks like a blob, and then you put it in the oven and it totally transforms, but you can't watch that transformation. And then it comes out and it needs 2 hours to cool. And then it needs, there's so many steps, and it's such a hard process, especially at the level that we wanted it at, because this is not an amateur competition. It has never been an amateur competition, Top Chef for us. So I think after 2 seasons, there was just so many challenges from a production standpoint that they kind of put it on a pause. However, flash forward to now, and there have been so many amazing baking and pastry competitions come out since our show, some of which by the same production company that are award-winning, and they have overcome all those challenges that at the time we didn't have the technology to face. So I have been lobbying hard to bring it back.
Oh my God, I'll lobby right there with you.
Join me. Yes, we need to get a petition going. There's so many other outlets for it now too. It doesn't have to necessarily be on Bravo proper, but now there is Peacock and there's all this original programming that's being.
And by the way, there was also so much great drama. Like aside from those seasons had really great drama, really great characters. And
chefs are a unique species and so different. I mean, we thought it was going to be the same thing as Top Chef, just baking, just like cakes and cookie version. And it took on a life of its own, like the characters and the crazy internal feelings of the kitchen. I mean, everything was different. And I think that's why it had its own very specific audience and cult following, and still does. So I'm grateful that you liked it.
Oh, I loved it. And you mentioned you're lobbying for it. Have you met with anyone in terms of bringing it back? Because I was actually going to ask you, I know there's been so many different Top Chef incarnations at this point, and I really do feel like it's something that could and should return. So have you had any actual conversations about it, or?
I have. It's the same producers that I work with on Top Chef every year. They're like my second family. We've been making this show for 18 seasons at this point, plus all the spinoffs. And every year I mention it in passing to my producers and my agents, and we kind of have a talk about it. I think they're just, underwater trying to figure out everything at the moment. But you're inspiring me to get back on the honker.
Please,
and,
I loved it.
Get back to it.
What's more fun is, do you like sampling the desserts better, or do you like sampling what's better to eat?
Well, it's interesting. People think that, first of all, I'm not a pastry chef, right? I'm a savory cook. I was trained in culinary. I'm not a chef, period. I do not run a kitchen. But I'm a savory cook and largely a savory person, but I definitely have a sweet tooth and a really true appreciation for the art of pastry, because it is so, so different than savory cooking. And they are just magicians. They are like wizards in the kitchen, the stuff that they do, the science and the creativity is so above and beyond my capabilities. From a tasting standpoint, the thing that I love about Top Chef is it's our meal. You know what I mean? We can sit down every day, and when we shoot an episode, we know it's usually lunch. And so I have a light breakfast, and then we get together and we have this big family lunch, and that's the challenge, and that's Top Chef. And so I feel great at the end of it, and then we go to judges table, and we do judges table, and then it's time for dinner, and we all go out for dinner. Well, not in a pandemic, but usually. Right. The thing that I remember about doing desserts that was so that caused me to really adjust was that I kind of assumed it was the same. I wouldn't want to eat a big breakfast or anything because I knew I'd be tasting treats all day. But then I would get to the end of my day and realize all I've eaten is 17 cupcakes today. And the sugar crash was so real. I would be falling apart. Emotionally, I'd be like a puddle at the judges table. My eyes would be rolling back in my head because I'd be crashing from the sugar rush that I had been experiencing 2 hours before. It was like a diabetic threat. Yeah. So I had to learn to actually eat meals before, really nutritious, healthy meals, because then I would, if not, I would have the sugar crash, and then all I'd want is a giant cheeseburger every day. And that doesn't make for a healthy lifestyle. So
if you were
them both, but
if somebody were to ask you what season is your favorite, I mean, you've done so many of them. Is there one you would tell people to kind of go back to and watch, or that you remember or sticks out in your head as being a favorite in terms of the main Top Chef, whether it be All Stars or?
I mean, it's hard because they're also different. The thing I love about Top Chef in general, which I really believe over our lifetime, of making this show, which has at this point been 15 years of my life. Wow. I think that it has, the uniqueness of it, the point that has differentiated it from so many other reality shows, especially in our category, is that every season takes place somewhere new, in a different city around the country, in a different country around the world. And it really plays into the content of the show, almost like a character in itself. And it really sets the foundation for the food we cook, the stories we're telling, and what we learn and what we taste, and the ingredients, everything. So, and then there's the cast, and they are such a incredible bunch, and there's always such uniqueness to their stories too. So I always think back to the seasons, and I think my favorite cast in terms of magic and energy and moment was season 6, which we did in Las Vegas, and then we went to Napa for the finale. And that was actually the season we won our Emmy for in Outstanding Competition Show. It was the season of the Voltaggio brothers and Kevin Gillespie and Jen Carroll and so many outstanding chefs. There was just like a magic to the chemistry of them. But when I think of my favorite season in terms of city to have visited or place that we went, I almost always go back to New Orleans, which was, I think, season 11, because New Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans food. Yeah.
The best.
Gail, I'm sure you've heard from so many celebrities. I know you guys have had celebrities on the show kind of come in and guest judge and things like that, because so many people are fans of the show. And actually, do you know Clea Duvall? She's an actress and she directed Happiest Season. She was on the show in the fall, and she had mentioned you as being a crush of hers because she's a big Top Chef fan. And
that's so cool.
And we were talking, it was like right during my binge. So we like talked about you for like a solid 20 minutes. I had to cut some of it out because it was like a lot of, we were just like gushing over you for a while, but she loves you. But who has surprised you? Is there anyone that's popped in your DMs or that you've met in person that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe.
Oh, so many people, like, so, random. I think Top Chef has sort of shown us that food is such a unifier. Like, it doesn't matter where you come from, what you do. And in terms of celebrity, what's interesting is, and I hadn't thought about it until we started making the show, is that, celebrities travel an enormous amount for the nature of their job. Musicians, actors, actresses, they are all, they're all traveling for their work so much. They're spending such large chunks of their life in foreign cities. They have to go to Berlin for a shoot, or they have to live in Atlanta for a year, or whatever it is, or they're on tour. And so they're so vested in restaurants, and they just appreciate good food because otherwise there's like nothing to comfort them when they're away from home. So I'm always amazed that like they're all really dedicated foodies. And really are so excited to meet us and to get recommendations. Like, I mean, everyone from the Jonas Brothers to the Foo Fighters, who've all been on the show and who have been so into food, which is really cool. People like Nancy Pelosi. I mean, runs the gamut. Politicians.
It was wild. It was wild watching
Charlize Theron,
that DC season, DC season where it was like, there's so many people in politics who were coming on the show, and it's been fascinating to watch.
Yeah.
Do you pre-write?
Everybody, right?
Do you pre-write those critiques? I mean, because I would imagine
no.
Nothing's pre-written.
You can't. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get when you sit down at the table.
I wanted to play like a quick little game with you. I just have two things here, and I was wondering, like, how would you, obviously you can't taste this, but these are pretty common things. And I wondered, like, what would your critique if you were doing something like a Reese peanut butter cup?
Oh, sure. I mean,
like, what would you say about
it?
Yeah.
I would say that the iconic combination truly has, made it an important piece of culinary, classic culinary combination in our universe. Like, it is, you can't deny the beauty of chocolate and peanut butter, right? They work so well together. There's the saltiness of the peanut butter and the creaminess of the chocolate, and the and the slight bitterness of the cocoa, which plays so well, with the nuttiness of the peanut. I believe that a Reese's peanut butter is also incredibly versatile as an ingredient in other things. Temperature really matters for a Reese's peanut butter cup. You put it in the freezer, and it's a crunchy, cold, refreshing snack. You warm it just gently, and it becomes the most epic ingredient in a s'mores, because that's interesting. When it's melty with a marshmallow and some graham crackers, or when you if it's just warm and soft and gooey, like, there's nothing more satisfying than that.
This is why you're so good at your job, Gail.
I don't know.
I do have one more. I don't know if you've seen this one. We'll just do one more, but this is the Lady Gaga Oreo, Chromatica Oreo.
Wait, no, show it to me. I haven't seen it.
Okay, so it's...
Oh, wow. Is that two or is that one?
This is two. I have two.
Okay, cool.
They are allegedly the same flavoring as the vanilla Oreo which is not the traditional Oreo. It's the vanilla with the cream, but they are green centers and sort of a pinkish, orangish outside. It's the Lady Gaga Chromatica Oreo. How would you describe this to someone?
There's a lot of good to Lady Gaga and Oreo as a collaboration. I mean, two things that are really important to me personally, that kind of bridge the gap between childhood and coming into adulthood, and what she stands for, which is being openly who you are and being true to yourself and being a chameleon and exploring your identity, which I love about her. And these are clearly exploring the identity of an Oreo. Color wise, that's a lot of stuff right there. But you know what? Maybe that's part of it. Like, be bold, be bold, be you. I feel like that's a big message in Lady Gaga's arsenal. And I also think that like a vanilla Oreo flavor is, great, classic, and beautiful. My concern in terms of ingesting it is just what the hell are the ingredients in there?
Right.
Probably just, red dye number 40 or whatever it is. And, in moderation, it's just fine.
What are the junk foods you eat in your everyday life? Like, there has to be some stuff that maybe culinary wise isn't great, but like that you just can't resist.
Oh, there's a lot, especially these days. We're comforting ourselves any way we know how, Danny Pellegrino. Salt and vinegar chips are, I would say, like the kryptonite in my life. Like, I cannot turn down a salt and vinegar chip. It's just a beautiful thing. So that's the first thing that, like, if it's near me, can't resist. I really like dark chocolate. Like, the darker, the better. An 85% dark chocolate chunk is all I need at the end of the night. Like, a little breaking off of a piece just completes the day, puts the period in the day, full stop. I like black licorice. I'm a big black licorice.
Oh, wow.
I know it can be very polarizing. My father is South African. He grew up in South Africa that, was colonized by the Dutch. And so there's a big Dutch influence. And so there's like black licorice comes into play, salty black licorice. And he really raised me to appreciate it. And I, in turn, have ensured that my daughter is not scared of black licorice because, P.S., although I love red licorice, that's not licorice. That's candy, and that's okay.
Right.
What else?
What about fast food? Would you go through a fast food drive-through line or no?
Well, full disclosure, no. Truthfully, like, I hadn't been in a fast food drive-through line in probably 2 decades. Just had no need for it. During quarantine, you indulge your children in any way you can because you just, number one, feel so badly for the whole damn thing. And also sometimes it's an emergency and you're in your car and you need your kids fed because they have to stop screaming or you're going to lose your mind. So during quarantine this year, we introduced our daughter to a McDonald's drive-thru. And, as you can imagine, she thinks it's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
She really loves a Happy Meal. But it's not my choice.
Yeah.
Necessarily for myself. Like, I love an In-N-Out burger. On the West Coast, I love Shake Shack on the East Coast. Like, I'm in that, bougie, better for you kind of slightly fast food model. I try not to eat any of it too much.
I love a Shake Shack is my personal favorite. We have them both out here, and I personally love the Shake Shack. Okay, in Top Chef world, I've always been so fascinated by when the chefs create something, we do see footage of that dish. And then we see all of you eating a separate dish. And I always wondered, like, do they make separate dishes for production to film it? Or does production go and recreate it? Like, how does this work? And tell me that. I need to know it.
This is a very astute question. And it's surprisingly one I don't get very often because you have to be paying attention. Like, that's a question for someone who's paying attention. Yes, good question. We do not wait for food. We do not let it sit around. We eat it hot as soon as it's made. So when we say you have 2 hours, they have exactly 2 hours. And it doesn't matter if my dress isn't done up or Padma's makeup isn't on. Like, we are at that table and we are ready for the food to eat it as fresh as can be. In the rules that you don't see behind the scenes is that when a challenge is explained to the contestants, right when Padma says, what is the line that she says?
The
it's Michelle.
when she's introducing the dish, or when she's
like she'll, and it's like, you'll have this many hours, go. And we often stop down for a minute, and the producers have to take the chefs through the legal rules of each challenge, particularly because there's a lot of questions, and we want them to be loaded with all the information so that it's fair and clear what they have to do, the exact time that they get, the ingredients that they have, and they all have to like sign off on these rules to know that everyone's on the same page. Because when there is miscommunication between production and the chefs, that could get really complicated. And so it is always told to them that, let's say you're serving for 8, or there'll be 8 people at the table. You have to make 8 dishes, or you're making 200 dishes. They always have to make one more than you see of people eating them. So, for example, this season, because of the pandemic, we have a judging panel of 12 past contestants, alumni, who come back, and they are on every episode with us as our diners, so that we don't have to ever bring in guest judges because of the quarantine regulations. So they are bubbled with us, and we all eat together every meal. So there's the 12 of them, more or less, and the 3 of us. So there's almost always 15 people eating on every episode in every elimination challenge. So when they are charged with their challenge, they always have to make 16 plates, and they know that. So that when the timer goes off, 15 plates go to the table, and 1 plate goes to a little section of our production called food porn, which is basically where the beauty shot goes. And there's a whole other team that takes that beauty shot and photographs it and shoots it, and that gets put into the episode.
Has there ever been a time where you think that maybe you have a different dish than someone else? Like maybe they plated it a little bit off or something? That must happen a lot.
All the time.
Yeah.
And that's, that's why there's 4 of us at the judges table, because we want the full gamut of experience. And often, if, this is not a dictatorship, even though Tom may say otherwise, it's a, it's a well, it's not a total democracy, but, there is a governing body of 4 of us, so that there is room for discussion and experience. And often we find, definitely people plate things differently. They have to cook for so many people, and they have to make so many different duck breasts, and one duck breast might be overcooked while one is perfect and one is undercooked if they're not paying attention. So when they're serving it, I could get a very differently cooked piece of meat than Tom, and that's what we end up fighting out at the judges table, of the merits of how that matters, why that matters, and who made it best. What also we've seen happen a lot is, let's say, we use Restaurant Wars as an example in past seasons, although this season was very different for quarantine. Generally, over the years, we've split up for Restaurant Wars, or for different challenges where we're going to different stations, and like Padma and I will go to stations together, and Tom and the guest judge, or whatever the configuration is. And so we're eating at different stations at different times. And as the chefs are getting feedback from the different people who are tasting their dishes, they are adjusting as they go. So if I go at the very beginning of the challenge and taste something, it might not be as good as when the chef then has an hour until the other judges eat their food, and they've made some adjustments and fixed some issues that they're having. So there can be those
discrepancies,
discrepancies, variants. And so again, that's why the 4 of us, there's always at least 4 of us or 5 of us at judges table, so we can talk it out. And consistency is obviously key in a dining experience, but then it just becomes about the bigger picture and the merits of that dish and the technique and how to judge what is more important in that moment or whatever.
This might sound like a stupid question, but is there one thing you won't eat, or have you turned down a dish before?
It's not a stupid question. I get it a lot. No, I've never turned down a dish. Professionally, I couldn't do my job. Like, it's not about personal preference, even though there are definitely things that I like more than others. Like, we're all human, and we all have our aversions and our tastes, and we all feel differently about different food. But I know that my job is to be objective and to understand if it's cooked well, which isn't necessarily if I like it. Like, there's a big difference there. And so, no, I will never, ever turn down anything. I can appreciate all food even if it isn't to my exact taste. And but that's different than it not being seasoned properly, or if it's being overcooked, right? I understand the objectivity of technique versus my personal preference for something. There is definitely some food that I prefer not to eat or cook in my personal life because it's not my favorite. Like I have this sort of irrational black bean aversion, which I've written about before. And, I acknowledge that it's personal. I got very sick from black beans a long time ago, and it's hard for me to get over that.
Yeah.
But if someone serves black beans on the show, I'm not holding it against them because I once vomited when I was 25 because of a black bean dish and maybe some tequila. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's not their problem. And I can still appreciate the quality of their cooking technique and how they, incorporated it into the dish. Padma and I like our meat cooked to different doneness, but we both can appreciate, even though I like it more rare and she likes it more well done, when it's cooked properly either way, right?
I want to ask you some questions that people wrote in at the Everything Iconic Patreon. Paola wants to know, do you have a least favorite and favorite dish from all the seasons? There's been so many things. I'm sure it's tough, but.
Yeah, favorite's really hard because every season we get so much amazing food, and every season I learn so much and I'm like blown away at least twice an episode by a dish. Also, I don't have the brain capacity to remember 15 seasons, 5 spinoffs, 20 plates an episode, 15 episodes a season. The math is just
it's a lot.
Ridiculous. There's definitely dishes that have stood out in my mind. Paul Key, the winner of our Texas season, made a dish that I always go back to that was like a simple sunchoke and dashi soup with raw vegetables that was like so crazy simple and beautiful. I remember Kevin Spraga, who was the winner of our season 7 in DC. We went to Singapore. Actually, now I'm wondering if it was even him because it's all really foggy. It might have been one of the runners up on that season who made this fried banana fritter with sriracha that at the time
I remember that. Right.
Wow, that was so delicious. There's countless good things, but least favorite, there's been a number of those too. But there's a few that were almost inedible. There was an episode, season 2, really early on, that the dish was so salty I could barely put it in my mouth. And then there was one time in Las Vegas, our season 6, when they were out cooking in the desert in 112-degree weather, and the shrimp went bad because it was sitting in the sun, and it wasn't necessarily their fault. Luckily, Tom realized it when he started to put it in his mouth and stopped us all from eating it. So there's definitely things like that where I was like, ooh, that could have been real bad.
Right. Catherine Phoebe Beach wants to know, where does the extra food go? Does the production step in if you guys don't finish a plate? I'd imagine the camera people would just be like, okay, I'll finish it.
Pre-COVID was a different story. Nothing got wasted, nothing ever. Yes, anything we didn't finish, they may not be licking our specific plate, but yes, production, our camera guys, our culinary team would always eat leftovers for sure. And the contestants will eat their own leftovers. Obviously, this season was very different. We could not share plates amongst ourselves, let alone with anyone else. So the food on our plates was always put in the garbage for safety reasons, obviously. But there's also a lot of raw ingredients that don't get used. They have to stock the pantry for anything that the chefs might dream up, but they only end up doing what they do. So there's always so many raw ingredients, dry ingredients, a pantry of food, and perishables that, that beautiful bounty of fruits and vegetables in the kitchen that after 3 or 4 days need to be changed out to always look beautiful. And we never let that go to waste. And this year we were in Portland and we partnered with a food bank there and a church that had a soup kitchen and made sure that all of that food was delivered several times a week so that it was all being put to good use. A lot of hungry people out there. The
service industry has been hit so hard, like you mentioned, and I wonder what advice would you have for people who might want to help? I assume takeout and things like that. What can you tell people?
There's a lot. This year has been so, as I said, catastrophic. Really, it's like the collapse of an industry, like watching your friends just fall apart, their businesses, their decades of work in minutes just shut down completely. And luckily relief is on the way, at least partially. Literally this week was momentous, a year to the day later, and arguably many months too late, but it's something and we're extremely excited about it. And that's thanks to the Independent Restaurant Coalition that really lobbied in Washington to get this act passed. So thank you, President Biden. But at the same time, and so it's overwhelming to think as a citizen what you can do. And yes, takeout is still really important locally. Takeout, delivery, try to use apps that are not taking the big fees off the top from them. So there's definitely apps if you can use or placing the order directly where the businesses see the money as, maximized as possible. And then giving and donating if there's like relief funds for local restaurants. In my neighborhood, I know a lot of restaurants have set up relief funds for their employees and also are selling merchandise, hats, shirts, or are selling, a bunch of the great little wine bars and cafes in my neighborhood have turned into places for provision. So that's where I'm buying my wine because they're selling it at wholesale prices. That's where I'm buying some pantry staples. And then just spreading the word. If you had a good takeout experience, tell your friends. Post about it on social media, give them a great review. Like, it all matters. And I know it's appreciated, whether it's $5 or $500. I just think that restaurants need our love and support and need to know that if they're going to go to all this work to rebuild, that we're going to be there on the other side.
It's interesting you mentioned about the delivery apps, because I feel like most people they think it's so easy to just hop on that app, but it is important. If you could call the restaurant directly and you can either pick it up or get it delivered through them directly, it's really important.
Yeah, there's a couple really great apps. It's all still online. I know there's one called Toast and there's one called Chow Now, like that I know are really doing a great job of making sure that the minimal of charges or of fees are not going to the restaurant. So the restaurant are really managing it themselves and getting the most so that they're not losing money by doing takeout,
Gail, I feel like I could talk to you forever and I don't want to keep you much longer. So I want to try to wrap this up, but this was such a delight for me. I'm so impressed by all of the work you've done. And I love you guys, like you and Padma and Tom, to me are the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit of Bravo. And I love my Bravo, but
I'll take it.
after watching so many seasons, it's lucky. So good.
We feel good about the fact that like we truly love sitting down to dinner together and we get to do it a lot. And that, especially this year, has been like the greatest gift for all of us to be able to sit down at a table like we used to do and just talk about food and support the people we love, You've obviously had such a successful run on the show. Like what do you still dream about doing? Are there more books you want to write or what's like sort of next on your bucket list? Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, where to start? I'm just like overwhelmed by getting through each day, but I will say one of them was realized this year on Top Chef that we haven't talked about that I'm really excited about for the future is that we made another show while we were out in Portland that will air later this year after Top Chef airs, called Top Chef Amateurs. And it's the latest sort of spinoff of the show, but I think it is, like Desserts, really unique and special, even more so in many ways because it's so personal. Top Chef Amateurs was born out of quarantine, really. We've never had an amateur level to our show, right? Top Chef, unlike any other show, is like 100% about professional restaurateurs and chefs at the highest level. But this year in quarantine, everyone just became such incredible home cooks that you can't discount that and that experience and what home cooking means now. Like, it's totally different than it was a year ago, right? People are like running bakeries out of their homes and recreating 17-course menus from their page. It's like unbelievable. And so it was time to bring home cooks into the Top Chef fold. And we created Top Chef Amateurs to do that. It's about mega fans. I mean, truly mega fans who know the brand as well as I do, sometimes better. And we bring them into the Top Chef kitchen, and every episode is two different home cooks, really talented home cooks, who come into the Top Chef kitchen and really get like a day in the life of Top Chef. We put them through what it's like to walk into that kitchen, to do a challenge, to face off against a fierce competitor, and to stand at judges' table with us. And we're bringing back a lot of alumni to assist them, to judge them. So there's like a lot of, all-star faces that come and make that experience really special. And remember that the people we shot with had literally not left their houses in 9 months, right? And they flew to us, quarantined for a week, to spend a day in the kitchen with us. So there's a lot of tears from me, from them, like tears of joy. And also just seeing what these chefs are capable of, in the time we give them. And having never set foot in this crazy kitchen that's like really for professionals, they were amazing. And a lot of these people, there's like teachers and frontline workers, and like their stories are so cool. And I don't know, it was beautiful. So I can't wait for everyone to see it.
Gail, the last two questions I ask everyone, what's your favorite Mariah Carey song? And then also, if you were choosing for People Magazine's Sexiest Man Alive, who would you choose?
God, those are good questions. One, Mariah Carey. That's a big anthology of work. The first one that comes to mind is like All I Want for Christmas Is You, because Love Actually. It's in my head all year round. Maybe that's low hanging fruit, but it's there. Although, what's the one that's in my head? Fantasy?
Fantasy is so good. Yeah.
And I remember like the video was like amazing.
The roller coaster ODB remix was great.
Yeah, like just iconic, right?
Yeah.
So I'll take those. And then Sexiest Man Alive. Whew. Wait, who was the Sexiest Man Alive this year?
I think it was Michael B. Was it Michael B. Jordan? I think.
Yeah, it might have been. And he's up there for sure.
He's gorgeous.
Patrick Stewart is a weirdly, iconic, regal gentleman that I've always had an allegiance for.
Love that.
He's up there. And then I would say, oh my God, all the men. What a strange.
I love Patrick Stewart. I love that answer.
Question. I know that's a weird question. It's not that I want to see him with like his shirt off.
I get it. I love that.
He's just always been my guy. Because I'm a Star Trek nerd.
That's good.
I feel like there's obviously a lot others I could say, and I'm just, overwhelmed and
it's
blushing
perfect.
at the thought of it.
It's perfect. Gail, is there anything else you want to leave people with? Anything else you want to promote before I let you go? Obviously, I saw the premiere and I thought it was excellent. It didn't. I know you guys went through so much to film it during the pandemic, but I thought it was just fantastic, and it didn't feel like we missed anything. It was wonderful. So I can't wait for the rest of the season.
Thank you. I think this season's really honest. We address the pandemic. We address this moment in history for restaurants, for people at home, for people's experience, which can't be underestimated in all sense of the word. Like we try to face the problems of our time head on through the lens of food. And that includes everything from, the pandemic to Black Lives Matter to, like all of the most relevant things that are happening in conjunction with eating and how we experience, how we make our eating choices. So I hope that everyone finds it as joyful as we felt making it.
Oh, good. Well, Gail, thank you so much for taking the time. This was truly such a pleasure for me. I appreciate it. And I just want to let everyone know, if they're watching this on YouTube, click like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And you can find me on social media at Danny Pellegrino on Twitter and Instagram. Go follow Gail. Watch this season of Top Chef. Gail, thank you for taking the time. Take care and be safe.
And I'll keep you posted about Top Chef desserts if I get any closer.
We're making it happen because I need it.
I might call on you to sign that petition.
Please, I will. I'll call up Andy. We're gonna make it happen. Okay, Gail, thank you.